Jacques, thank you so much. Um, you almost made me cry there. I was thinking about that exact moment that you mentioned earlier off the wall. It was a Monday evening. Primrose Mahwebi was hosting at that
Yes.
point. And that's so beautiful because Dark Room that I'll be reading from this evening actually has a dedication to Primrose in it because Primrose really opened my eyes to the fact that we are all love poets at the end of the day, whether we are writing about politics, culture, heritage, there's always a golden thread of love that exists in all our work, and I miss it dearly. We spend so much time just talking about poetry, and it's really one of the people that have nurtured me as a writer. So thank you for that. Let me not cry as yet. We will cry as we continue reading. Um, as mentioned, this is my first collection of poetry that I self published with Poetry Publications. I am extremely proud of this body of work, and even selecting the poetry for this evening was a bit of a challenge, but here we are. I will start with a prayer as we do. This one is called Holy. In the name of the Father, I kneel before this altar. I take the sacrament to my lips, placing it softly on my tongue as I forsake everything I am just so that I can be seen as a man. I reject every inclination in me to protect this virility. I'll change the way I walk that I may be accepted in the circle of men, condemning those who allow themselves to be free, while I take into my mouth, in silent prayer, every sacrament that seeks to silence me. In the name of the Son, I seek atonement, willing to pay for every sin performed on the skin, the craving for intimacy, the hell I find myself in. Bless the truth I do not speak so that I may not be seen as weak. Absolve me from the perceived iniquity as I ingest the fragility of masculinity. No more false gods and slippery tongues. I will die to my old ways. Baptized and blameless, I will rise on the third day. In the name of the Holy Ghost, I lay my sins on this altar, praying for a release from this ungodly host, so that apparitions in dark corners and concealed rooms can find their way to the promise of heaven and the freedom in light of salvation. Bless the sacrament to my lips, O Lord. For I am worthy not only to eat the crumbs off your table, but to sit by your side, loved and praiseworthy. The lamb sentenced to be sacrificed on the altar of machismo. Bless the sacrament to my lips, O Lord, in the name of my Father, this Son, and the ghosts of men who loved me. That's holy. I grew up, or I was raised in the Anglican Church, and there was this. A lot of it stayed with me. The candles, the incense that we burn in the church, and I set out to write this poem as a way to find peace within my gender and my sexuality, and that's a conversation for another time. Those are two different things. And to just reconcile my spirituality and my sexuality, which is a lot of what this work is about. I'm going to move on. Hope you all enjoyed that. Next, I want to read My Savior. Where do your thoughts go when they are not focused on me? I ask because I wonder who has your attention, who has the ability to make you happy. There's a gray cloud threatening the peace of my blue sky. There's a breeze carrying your scent to me, sweet like our memories. Separate but together, alone but never lonely. There's your face, your hair, your hands planting seeds of love in places that time had forgotten to change and to heal. You are every season to me. The cold and indifference of winter, the heat and hedonism of summer, present in every breath, a love I die to every time I feel it inside of me. The silence in the solitude that loving you has become. The rain that threatens to cover all of me, the clouds in my blue sky. Fleetingly, you occupy every space within me, around me, present, always. My memory and my longing belong to you. My skin is bruised by your hands in the most sensual way. Someday, I will stop missing you. One day, loving you will be stored in long term memory. I pray that day never comes. Hmm. I should speak a bit about what this collection of poetry is about. I named it Dark Room, as you know, the story follows the poet at the end of a relationship and them having to reconcile a lot of feelings and hurt and disappointment while having to navigate the world again as a single person. I wanted to be messy and name the chapters after all my exes, but then I thought, nah, we all need a little bit of mystery. Thanks for that, Ed. It should be a bit of mystery. They need to guess who it's about. And it deals with very adult issues. So I've actually banned my family from reading the book unless they want to have those kind of conversations, which I'm not willing to have with them. This one is called Lust's Luster. We found solace together because our pain is the same. Lost in lust, we play love games, pushing boundaries of intimacy and toying with notions of love in the face of our insecurities. Then we resume our lives, proceeding along separate paths, leaving love stained cotton sheets to tell stories of how our bodies open gates to galaxies inside of ourselves. We find our way through lonely nights into each other's embrace, leaving our moans against the walls and the ceiling of this place, echoing passion's call and heeding love's beckoning. We dare not step too deeply into familiarity, fearing that in our moments apart, love seeps in too easily and leaves us wanting more. Thus, we tread a fine line, ignoring love's call that echoes in every thrust as we plow through our fears, understanding that intimacy requires trust. Our moans like salutations, our tongues lost and inebriated on each other's skin. Our tears a sacred rite of passage as we find ourselves alive in lovemaking, surrendering to a feeling as our paths collide here in this bed, as we hold and heal each other, where breath against skin says more than the words we speak at sensation speak, where lips against flesh renders the other weak. We take chances like a gambler on a losing streak, hoping to find ourselves lost in love when lust's luster leaves. Mm. Let's see what's next. Holy is done. Ooh, roll call. Is my mom on this call? Is my dad on this call? I know they saw the link. Thank you so much. This one is called Daddy Issues. Um, yeah. And it's actually so interesting, the backstory here. When we were editing this collection of poetry, I was working with Poetry Publications and Flo Wellington. She edited all the poetry. This one confused her because she said, there was this shift in um, gender that happens in the poem. I said, it's written from experience. And it's very interesting how, as queer individuals, especially queer men, we are subject to a lot of, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Feminism hasn't reached us as queer men. I'm still subjected to being a good looking man. I can still be called daddy, and it's fine, irrespective of how I feel about it. Um, that subjugation, I think, of men, and the fact that we are not allowed to call out certain acts, and certain things that women do to us, um, is something that I really want to unpack a bit more in society and talk about, and this poem speaks to that. It's called Daddy Issues. She calls me daddy in places where her husband won't hear it, writes it in spaces where her husband won't see it. I know I'm just an outlet for her feelings when he is not around, the unwilling participant in this drama she needs when he can't be found. Someone to validate her heart's homelessness and into the loneliness that persists. Like my father, I too can be a warm space, the heat and comfort of a fireplace, still cold and distant when the flame goes out, forlorn and loveless like a drought. He wants to know where the love has gone. I have no answers for him. The nonchalance has won. I'm so reckless and careless, but his pain cannot be undone. He is so foolish and unaware that he is trapped in the web of emotions that I have spun. I'm just my father's child, warm, inviting, but still much too wild. You can try to tame me, but you'll always lose. I cannot be restrained, not with these daddy issues. It's in my eyes and in my smile. It's the way I speak to you when I want you around. It's the love that's withdrawn and the gaze that's gone cold. It's why I'm able to love you, yet leave you alone. Yeah. It's why I'm able to love you and yet leave you alone. So interesting, huh, to read these again after such a long time. I say after a long time, it's really not been that long. The book is only about 2, 3 months old. Oh, this one is called Prelude to a Dream. I wrote it going through the curating process of this collection of poetry. And oftentimes, I guess where other people journal, I write poetry, I've realized. And this is how my work comes together. I'd love to be able to sit and just write out my feelings for 3, 4 pages. But when I revisit it, I always realize that there's something really poetic in the way that it's come together, in the writing itself. There's a rhythm that exists. There is some metaphor at play. And this one, I was in my old apartment. It was around this time of year, Allah. It was around May, April, May. The seasons were changing. I had found myself in a WhatsApp relationship that wasn't going anywhere, and this person would just appear when they wanted to. And I was also just bored enough to entertain it. So this one is called Prelude to a Dream. The current is so strong it pulls me in deeper until I am consumed. There's no need to fight the pull or to resist the slipstream as I slip deeper and deeper into you. I've waited here, watched the moon wax and wane in anticipation of your return until the day I can dare to utter your name again. The cold autumn air finds me weakened by longing and seated, oh God, and seared by the summer sun that's gone and left me to face the colder nights alone. Like you, it left without forewarning. All I have is a dream and a need to feel that heat again. I'm so reckless with these feelings, wanting love when longing lives in between the breaths that remind me that I'm here with an ache that remains unattended. As the tide turns, so do you return. My breath finds purpose, and poetry churns in me again. If I'm meant to drown and never regain consciousness, then so be the story that is told. I love despite all my fears and reservations. I let the water take me. And if I return, let that rebirth be celebrated. And may I be bathed in the splendor of a love unparalleled. But while I wait, let me be doused with patience as I listen to the wind, waiting for whispers from you. Hmm. I love that poem. I would go out on a limb and say it's one of my favorites, if not my favorite from this collection. The last one I'll read from this one is called Like Music. Um, yeah, I think it's a beautiful way to wrap up the darkroom portion of the reading. I've made a commitment to you like the commitment I've made to music. You live in my heart in the same space occupied by my art. This is not a passing phase or some teenage love craze that will fade as soon as the troubles start. No, this is for life. I know this like I know my voice. This is a choice that I have made, a decision that only a grown man can make. Love, it isn't easy. It bends you and it breaks you until you are born anew. It shapes you and it forms you until you are renewed. I'm no longer looking because what I need is right here, in my memory, in my heart, in my knowing, and in my art. I breathe you like you breathe me. This love is intrinsic, and that is why I've made a commitment to you, like the commitment I've made to music. I know you like the moon knows when it is time to shine, dancing with the sun in the sky. We move to the same tempo, interlaced in the same flow. Rhythmic elegance, graceful cadence, as natural as breathing, as familiar as speaking. You speak to the core of me, transcending this reality and healing this dichotomy. In chorus, we occupy this time and space. Love punctuates the present and heals the separation. I breathe you like you breathe me. Ascension. This love is intrinsic, inherent like the melanin in my skin and the memory of healing in my cells. It speaks to my soul and knows its name and whispers refrains like God, Source, Allah, Jehovah, Light, Freedom, Poetry. You find me when I have no more words. When I stagnate and my flow is inhibited, you liberate and lead me to melodies when words fail me. My passage through the melancholic night, you whisper, God, Source, Allah, Jehovah, Light, Freedom, Poetry. And I remember who I am. This love is intrinsic, and that is why we are like music. Thank you. That could be my favorite poem, actually. I think I lied earlier. Now, can you guys still see me? Yeah? I'd like to read f- from what is my next manuscript that I'm busy with. Um, Last week, I was so inspired by the feature poet and just some poetry that she read that made me remember some pieces that I'd written previously. And when we look at the situation in the world right now, especially I'm not going to cry, I'm going to keep it together. When we look at what is happening, that what is happening in Gaza and the Middle East, it really does break my heart, and it's so reminiscent of what we've experienced in this country. I always say that as South Africans, we have no choice but to be in support of Palestine. Winslow, do not get on a soapbox. Just keep it keep it together. This poem is called "Struggle: A Dialogue," and I wrote it years ago, and I just want to revisit it because it feels apt for the moment. Separated from who I am, I search for reminders of myself in you. Maybe you can speak, see, or hear my richness, my heritage, and my ancestry. Maybe you have walked along seasides while waves collide and seen visions of my people before we were the enemy, when we could walk this land freely. Before political crimes, boycotts, and riots, the smell of burning tires, curfews, stayaways, and the mourning mothers' sorrow-filled cries. Before we were moved the first time, the second time, praying that this time is the last time. Now we wait through the long, dark night, listening to mothers weeping and fathers drinking in hopes of forgetting. Now we are left to wonder. Maybe we can raise a family here. Maybe we can root ourselves here. Maybe we can honor our dead here. It is hidden in the fondness that dances in the eyes of the elders when they remember a time before this internal war, when bullets from oppressors' guns took young sons from their mothers. But beaten and bruised, misused and moved, I still see pride in the eyes of my people. I see it when we celebrate. I see it when we congregate. I can see it move. It is hidden in the song of gratitude that my granny sings. It is who we are and who we will always be. It resides in the curl of my hair. It is there in that place that I was taught that I should hate and I should fear about myself, about this face, and about our beautiful race. And that is why I see pride in the eyes of my people. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Who were we before all of this confusion? Questions, questions. All these questions as we meander aimlessly, having to continually rise above corruption and slavery, all the while sustaining families, cultivating a culture, and maintaining our stride. But beaten and bruised, misused and moved, I still see pride in the eyes of my people. A pride that ensures that we will rise. The battle is not over, but this war will be won. Our voices are still powerful, and our songs will be sung. And that is why I see pride in the eyes of my people. Thank you. Whew, that's me. Unless there's still some more time. Whoa. That was a journey. Thank you, everybody.
Definitely more time, Winslow.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Okay.
Yes.
Oh,
If you want
yeah,
to read some more, go for it.
yes. Okay, okay. Can I read some new poetry? How would that
Absolutely.
feel? Yeah, would
Absolutely.
everybody like? Let me find it so that I can read it. Um, Last week I read A Sweet Beckoning, right? Yeah.
If you
I
look again for those who weren't here, sorry, up to you.
oh, I just trying to find one that will, yeah, because I want to read some new work, or work that hasn't really gone out. Oftentimes, I find myself observing a lot of things. My dad is a landscaper, so in between jobs, I would work for him, and this is something that I noticed one day. This one is called For Linda. It was in the way you sat staring at the ocean, the wind gushing and wailing past your face, but you paid it no mind. It was the contentment and the peace you found while sitting in the garden that your hands helped to build. Your name will not be remembered here. Here you will always be that boy. Tell that boy to bring more sand. Tell that boy we need more sand. Where's that boy with the sand? When we leave this place, nestled between the mountain and the ocean, and you have to return back to your home where there are no concrete floors and the curves in the steel walls reminds you of the ocean below the garden that your hands planted. Remember this moment. Yeah, like I said, poets always observing, always writing, always just present. Trying to find another one now, and then I'm going to call it because this new moon in Cancer has me feeling all sort of emotions. This will be me closing, and then we can take some questions. Jacques, this one is for you. That very first poem that you mentioned, that I read, and that was the first time actually that I ever read my poetry out loud and in front of an audience. And now that I look back at it, I'm so fortunate and so blessed to have been part of that movement. I think all of us, there are a few of us on this call, to be part of that poetry movement that took place in Cape Town in the noughties. What was that? 2004, 2005, 2006. Next year we'll make 20 years of performing, and it's so interesting to be reminded of that. So, Jacques, thank you so much. This one is called Too Many Times. And I don't know if this has happened to anybody on the call, but let's talk about it. I go through periods when I don't write at all. Where I think we were talking about it earlier. You write and you just kind of put it away, but there were there are periods where I just actually will not write. And Jill Scott talks about how that's when you're meant to just be taking in life, experiencing life, and so that you have something to write about. And when I came out of that period of not writing, this is a poem that came to me. And years later, I realized it's actually about depression. And it's still, I mean, and I've said this a few times this evening. I think this is actually my favorite poem, and I just cannot leave it behind. It's called Too Many Times. Too many times I'm crippled by my indecisions, my inhibitions, and my restrictions, and I find myself unable to see the beauty of the path before me. Too many times fear clouds my perception and leads to the resurrection of habits that I thought were forgotten. And my being seems anchored to a past filled with memories of pain and abandonment, which fuels the ever present, ever vigilant fear, waiting hungrily for an opportunity to make its presence known. Too many times I find myself lost deep in a rhythm, bound by unspoken words and blinded by my addiction to a life that holds no rewards for the battles which my soul has fought. And I find myself in indecision, caught between my duty and my vision, when my daily existence has become an incision on this path towards righteousness that has become my mission. So, too many times I wonder, when the heavens start to fall, will I stand tall in my beliefs? Or will I find comfort and relief in declaring defeat? Somehow the ends of my mind do not seem to meet, and I find myself in indecision. But like dawn announces the sun, my joy no longer shackled and my peace no longer bound, dance together in celebration for the new day my soul has found. And I am reminded that I am seeking an understanding of self, that beautiful place suspended in the fabric of time, where the creator and the creation become one, and the dishonesty that plagues my reality dissipates in the light of this rising sun. Thank you. And I'm done. Thank you so much.
That's such a beautiful reading, Winslow. Can we have a warm hand of applause for this one?
Thank you, Sean. Thank you so much. Oh my word. You've really got me in my feelings, Jacques. Why would you bring up off the wall? It's like you just went and opened the tap of all of those emotions. Thank you so much.
Well, it's good. Yeah, it's good. It's good to feel.
It is good to feel. You are right.
That's what
Thank you.
poetry is for. Yeah. Um, I'm gonna hand over now to my compadre Ed.
Compadre.
I'll be here.
Cheers. Thank you, Jacques. Thank you, Winslow. It's, like you said, a real journey through intimacy and vulnerability. And yeah, this is the part of the evening where we everyone is welcome to comment, or if there's a question for Winslow, you can raise your hand, actual hand, virtual hand. It's all good. Georgia, go for it.
Winslow, hi. Thank you so much for that beautiful, beautiful experience. And I just,
Oh, thank you.
I think what I want to say is you are such an incredibly beautiful presence. And I think I would sit and listen to you read the phone book back to back, and maybe even a Yellow Pages, and possibly even ask you to start from the top again. It's that sort of, I just so appreciate how you are and how generous you are with yourself, and luckily your poetry is so beautiful as well. But it really is. I know, I absolutely loved it. But that gorgeous presence of yours, how you carry your obviously absolutely stunning poems through. It was wonderful to be here tonight and listen to that. Thank you so much.
Oh, Georgia, thank you. Tears, actual tears.
Yeah,
Wait.
me too.
No,
Me too.
you know, there are few things that I truly, truly love in this world. being near a body of water, the ocean or the river or a lake or a dam, being in the mountains somewhere, being on a trail hiking, being in nature. But poetry, it's it anchors me, it really does. And again, Jacques started the waterworks, taking me back to a time when we wrote. That's what we did. We wrote and we performed and we loved it. And this is what I love about this platform. And I'm so thankful to the Red Wheelbarrow, for providing this platform for us and for having the opportunity to read from this very vulnerable work, um, because it does leave you a bit, um, raw, to put your emotions out like this. But I mean, I could read poetry. I spend a lot of money on other people's books, and I listening to it. I love this. This is what I love, and thank you so much. I really had such an incredible time doing this evening. Thank you, Georgia.
And I'd love to read more, so I'll look for your book.
Well, I'm in Cape Town next week, and I'm definitely coming to the open mic. So let's make it a date.
I'll do my best to come somewhere near you at some point. Yeah, that would be
We'll find
great.
each other. We'll find
Thanks,
each other,
Winslow.
Georgia. Thank you so much. Deborah Ewing. Why does that name sound familiar?
I don't know. Hi, Winslow. I'm in Durban. It's so lovely to hear you. And I agree with Georgia. I was thinking I'd be happy if you would just give us a few more stanzas of your laughter.
If my mother,
It was
eh?
so thrilling to hear you saying, this is my favorite. No, it's like, this is my favorite. This is my favorite. I want to know, are there any poems that you wrote that you don't like, and what do you do with them?
The thing is, we were having this conversation earlier when the call started. Deborah, thank you so much. First of all, let me start there. Thank you so much for the kind words. I don't know. Sometimes when you revisit it, Jacques mentioned it earlier as well. Revisit it after 7 years, you'll be a totally different person, and the poetry will make sense. I There are ones that I don't like. When I feel that it's a bit reductive, or it doesn't really make me feel anything. But then there are ones like Holy that I read earlier. I actually sat down and intentionally wrote it. I'm gonna write, I was like, I'm gonna write this to sound like it came out of the Eucharist of, in the Anglican Church, and infuse this this I don't know, my sexuality and gender struggles into it as well, but write it um as church verse. And I didn't like it at all. I was like, no, this felt contrived. It felt a lot of things. And then I put it into Sugar Water, and it was the one poem that everybody was just like, holy, my word. And then I started falling in love with it. And then I had to film it for the National Arts Festival, and I got to film it at the Market Theatre. Mind still blown. I still cannot believe that I got to, perform at the Market Theatre in Joburg. How iconic. Um, and it just I looked at it again, and I was like, wow, this is a really good poem. Why did I hate it so much? So I think it's probably like a relationship, right? You like them in the beginning, and then you're like, who the fuck is this person? Or depending on your mood, you're like, actually, I don't like you that much. And then you wake up tomorrow morning and the sun is shining. You're like, oh, wow, I'm laying next to the love of my life. I guess that is the relationship we have with our art as well. And, but I go through it, like even selecting the poetry to read this evening. I was changing my selection up until 10 minutes before I logged in, because there was just this feeling of I haven't really sat with the work since we went through the editing process, since the launch. Occasionally I will read it and just be like, wow, this is this is good. But I guess that inner critic is needs to be present so that we keep pushing ourselves, we keep pushing our pen, that we keep writing. I think is necessary, maybe. I don't know. I'm just talking at this point. Let me drink some tea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Georgia. Thank you, Winslow. I see Mary has a hand. Hi, Mary. Sorry, a hand up. That should be. I've asked you to unmute. I don't know if you can do that. Okay. Mary, while you grappling with technology there, Jacques, your hand is next. So shall we move to Jacques in the meantime?
Yeah, I'm still formulating my question really, but I'm just struck by how vulnerable your poems are and how okay you are with that. And I'm moved by it. I look forward to reading your book and just sitting with these poems of desire and surrender and the possibility of loss. And I wondered whether there are particular poets that inspired you while you were writing these poems. That's the one thing, and the other, yeah, I'm very fascinated by how you move from the personal to a point of view where you are writing about the community. But yeah, that's maybe for another time. But poets that moved you, that helped you to find your voice. I'd love to hear about them.
Thank you, Jacques. So there's obviously method in the madness when it comes to being a writer. I decided to lead with Darkroom and this narrative because it was fresh and I wanted to leave these emotions in the dark room, if that makes sense. I wanted to leave them there and develop it into something positive. And this is the outcome, the book has that outcome. But essentially for me, ooh, this is now where the conversation gets deep. The Gen Zs speak about non-binary and like the dismantling of the binaries. And it doesn't
Mm.
just exist in gender, right? It doesn't just exist in male and female. I think we also need to look at things like good and bad and other binaries that exist. So for me personally, I cannot separate the spiritual from the sexual, the political from who I am, and it all becomes one big thing for me. It, I don't know how to explain it. I try to look at it all through the same lens, which is why I made the choice to lead with, because the other manuscript is ready. I've been writing for almost 30 years at this point. So the other book is ready. It just needs to be edited and it's there. But I decided to lead with the love poetry because I wanted to be vulnerable. I wanted to just put my feelings out there because I hold these poems so dear to me. I don't want them out there in the world, but I decided no, it's time to be vulnerable and we need it. The climate that we are in and everything that is happening, we need vulnerability and we need poets to reflect the times. And the one thing I know for sure is everybody can relate to having their heart broken, lusting after somebody, and being in love. Like, that's one thing I know for sure. And the poets who inspired me, when I was in high school, oh God, I'm going to give you my age. I stumbled across and one of Maya Angelou's autobiographies, and she would always have poetry or poems in the autobiographies as well. And at the time, there was a movie out, Poetic Justice, which featured a lot of her writing. Janet Jackson and Tupac. It was a big cultural shift for people of color at the time. It really it was such a canon movie and a canon event for us. So I would go to the library. I was such an avid reader. My mother would always keep me at home. I don't know why. So I was always reading. I'd go to the library, get books. And so I had them search on the system where the other autobiographies were in Cape Town. And I would go to that library and take out the book and I would write the poetry down. So Maya Angelou, Essex Hemphill is a queer poet from America who really, really inspired me as well. I liberated a copy of one of his books. Mary got it from my uncle because I was like, you don't understand this man's writing. And he really just wrote about gender and sexuality in a way that I'd never experienced it before. Growing up in the 80s and the 90s, I mean, everything was so taboo. When George Michael came out, it was such a big thing. And for me, I was like, oh my God, my crush is gay. I don't know what to do with myself. The world is a great place. But defining his writing when I was really young, I think I was about 17, 18 years old, also just shifted me or gave me I don't know gave me almost a carte blanche on writing what I feel and writing what I want to write about. And I love that. Also, I was performing and reading in Cape Town at a time where there weren't a lot of out poets. You know what I mean? There weren't a lot of queer poets just out there writing about these things. So I really felt I needed to expand that part of my writing and grow. So as mentioned, Primrose Magwebi, Primrose had this way of writing forwards in a line, and you would go, wow. I love Primrose's writing always. Khadija Tracy Higa, the way she could write about politics and culture and heritage and weave such beautiful just metaphors and narratives into what she does. Another one who just inspires my writing. And there are some other poets as well. I cannot remember anybody's name right now, but Alice Walker as well, big inspiration to me. Um, and it's interesting because I actually came to read Alice Walker quite late in life. The first book of hers that I read was By the Light of My Father's Smile, and it opens with a lesbian love scene. And I was like, okay, we are writing and we are reading and we are doing all of this. But I get inspired a lot by singer-songwriters. Michelle Ndege has this beautiful album called Bitter, which this book is very similar to. And there's just, I find the poetry in everything. But those are a few writers. I think, Jacques, when we connect, I'll make a list on my phone and then I'll say these are the ones that I like. Because I've got a folder with poetry, and then we can have a nice chat about it. Thank
That's
you.
a wonderful,
I think I answered. I don't know if I did. I can also,
uh, that's a
you know,
wonderful, generous answer. And I think that's a very good idea. Thank you.
yeah, let's do that. No, pleasure. Mary,
Yeah, great. Well, one
hey,
thing I know for sure is that you're not a good liar
why'd you say that?
because you express your emotions in your face just so beautifully. As you're reading, you're not just reading the words, but you're giving us the experience as you read, which is very. I think that's why people just love what they're seeing, because it goes very deep.
Oh, thank you, Mary.
Yeah. So thank you for that. It was very moving, and you give yourself so much. You feel like I know you just from this reading. It's like you're open and vulnerable, and it's beautiful, really. So
Thank,
my
thank you.
question is your struggle. What was the name of the poem about the dialogue?
Yeah, struggle a dialogue.
Struggle
Yeah.
a dialogue.
Yeah.
Right. And which book is that? Is that published or is that new?
That one is coming up in the next book. As because I just needed to separate the love stuff from the other stuff for myself. So that will be in the next book. That one was also written in the noughties, as they call it. I think it was
Oh, wow.
2007, 2008, as part of a project for the IJR, the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation. And they had us workshop and meet all of these struggle heroes, struggle veterans, and we had to then write poetry afterwards, which was then performed at SABC Studio. So um, it's interesting to revisit old work like that, and it still resonates today. And that is that feeling I got last week, where I was like, wow, so poetry doesn't age, art doesn't. It matures surely, but it doesn't age. Like you can't look at it and say, okay, this is 80s or that is 90s. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I don't know where that was going. Where it
Yeah,
was
well,
going.
because history repeats itself.
That's the thing as well.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
circular,
So what's happening in Gaza is maybe much worse, but as Mandela said, that Palestine, we can't be free until Palestine is free, because it's the same story. When he went there, he said it's the same thing, just worse in Palestine.
and it keeps getting worse.
Yeah.
Like when you look at how apartheid was based on what was happening in Australia previously. They took learnings from Australia and they brought it here. When you look at how the First Nation people of Australia are viewed as fauna and flora, they're not viewed as humans. This is it escalates. It keeps escalating to a point, and I'm like, are we just always going to sit by? I get so heated about selectivism. Okay, fine, I'm just going to put a flag on my Facebook picture, and this is now what I'm doing. I'm like, no, guys, an injustice to one is an injustice to all. The stories that my granny told me, that is, that's in other poems, that it's so personal that you realize that, yeah, I don't know, it's whew, wow, you see the kom hier dan.
Yeah, no, it's
Great.
as you say, you can really take off on this.
It escalates constantly, and I'm like, at which point are we going to go? No. I love the fact that the world has gotten to a place now where we realize that this online activism, it's great, but we need to show up, we need to march. I remember being in Cape Town, and I was randomly in Cape Town. I can't remember what I was in Cape Town for. And there was a march happening, and I went and I joined, and it's like, I was like, okay, so people just left their jobs to come and march. And I loved it. It's such a feeling, and that's what we need. We need to take to the streets, guys. Look at me.
No, it's a release as well.
Number one suspect. I'll put on my balaclava and I'll be the one there. But I grew up in the 80s, 1985, the riots, watching students jumping over our wall to hide away from the Caspers. You know what I mean? I'm sitting by the window like a 5-year-old, 4-year-old child, and they're telling me, don't move, don't do anything, don't say anything. But living through that, going to school in the 80s, and we always were told to bring a handkerchief to school. And I always thought it was because, we can blow our nose. And then one day they were firing tear gas close to the school, and the teacher sent this one boy with a bucket to go and get some water, and we all had to go and dip our handkerchiefs in the water and cover our eyes and our mouths with it so that the tear gas wouldn't affect us too badly.
Mm.
Live through these kind of things. It it breaks my heart. It totally breaks my heart. What is happening in Gaza, and I just feel helpless all the time.
No, but
But yeah,
you can write. You know, that's in Palestine.
that's what
They will say, which is what is just so amazing about them, which is this word sumud. But
Mm,
they don't despair. Well, many people do, obviously, because it's so difficult. But a lot of people who they say to despair shows our lack of trust in God. So we have to, yeah, and that's
yeah,
really powerful, you know. So
very powerful.
that, and God meaning creation. So you know that there's more to it than us, than that we have to act on that. We have to work at it and work through it and not give in to despair.
True,
So
true.
poetry is action.
It is actually poetry is it's a protest in itself. You know, it's like I've been reminding people it's Pride Month, International Pride Month. I'm like, guys, Pride has always been a protest. Happy Pride, great, but you know, it's still illegal in many countries for me to act on my feelings for somebody, for another man. You know, and especially in Africa. So there's no happy Pride. We must remember that it's a protest, and me, by being here and by being present and by being vocal, I am
Praise
part of
God.
that. Thank you,
Yeah,
Mary. This has
yeah.
been beautiful.
Well, I look
Thank you.
forward to reading that, the whole poem, because
Yeah,
it's very relevant.
yeah.
Mm,
Especially, you know, those lines before we were moved the first time, the second time, hoping that this time is the last time.
mm,
I felt that.
mm.
Because you know when I see the TikTok videos, you know, there's a lot of, you know, and you watch these people documenting their lives as they were moved because of war and then going back and trying to rebuild, but then still not feeling safe. It really does. Yeah,
Well, and
poetry is
you
powerful.
ending saying, "I see pride in the eyes of my people," and
Yeah.
that's really poignant because you know when you walk on the street and then you see these guys looking for food in dustbins, and then you know they rise out of that, and I look at them and you know I'm just looking for where they are at. You know, what do they have? They still got something in them. You know,
Hmm.
they're just hungry like you know like animals, like searching, or is there still a being there? You know, how have they survived this indignity? And yeah, so it's in Gaza and it's here too, on this every,
Every corner, there's a
yeah,
war.
yeah, exactly.
I love what you touched on there, Mary, because um, I'm a writer, I'm a poet, I'm a people watcher, so I can watch people all day. I can just
Mm.
stand by the window and watch people. And there's this guy, this car guardian in the street, and he is so flamboyant. I love it. Now he's wearing a Tigger from Winnie the Pooh onesie, and he's walking around in. He's just, and I watch him, and I just like it's so interesting watching this man, and I'm assuming that he is queer. He's part of the family, right? But just the way that he handles these guys on the streets and is like, don't mess with me. I'm still here, you know? Like, and the fact that he would, and the way he dresses, sometimes I'm like, damn, he's so swaggy. Like, he'll pull out these looks, and I'm like, where? And it's, and that's a thing that I always wonder as well, you know, there must be some, there is still some humanity left. There's another poem that I didn't read this evening about a friend of mine who um, drugs just took him and his mind went with it. And
Mm.
we'd be in Cape Town, we'd be on Green Market Square for the free jazz festival concert. And he would just appear out of nowhere and just stand in the circle, not talk, just be present with us. And in those moments, I would see flickers of him. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's something that he's still there,
he's still
even though
alive.
now he's still alive. Even though now you know, he just stays at home at his mom's house and grows vegetables. But that's now where his life has where he's found himself now. But it was interesting to just see, those little light beams of who he used to be or who he is still coming through. So it still exists in there. And that is that pride. Irrespective of how, especially being Cape colored, we will laugh through everything. Everything is a joke. My mom, if my mother's on this call, she'll tell me later about this. But everything is a joke. We call my cousin and I used to fight all the time. They used to call us Babi and Mochi. I don't know if you guys understand that, but so if literally my cousin and I are in the same room, that's what they call us, and then that's the running joke. But we laugh through so much, and we dance, and we find our way through so much, and that is just, I think, a testament to the human spirit and who it is that we are, irrespective of what we go through. There is always there's always a light that pulls us back, and that's God. Yeah, so we're not going to give into the despair, Mary. We are not. Thank you for
No.
that. I will
Yeah.
carry that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. With thanks to Gaza.
I love that. With thanks to
Mm.
Gaza. Beautiful. Thank you. Oh, happy Islamic New Year to any Muslims.
Oh, my, really? Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Happy New Year.
Mm.
May Allah grant you all your
Mm.
wishes and your inshallah.
It's Eid today.
No, it's Islamic New Year. So this is when the Hajj will start now. After
Yeah.
this.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
They should do the Hajj in Gaza this year.
Yeah, it will be in Saudi.
I know, but I mean, they should all go to the. Anyway, take God to
That-
Gaza. Yeah.
Mhm.
No, your
Beautiful.
poetry is really moving. So thank you. And it's nice to be introduced to you. And thank you to the Red Wheelbarrow.
Yeah.
That's an amazing platform. And yeah,
Thank you, Mary. Lovely meeting you as well.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Winslow. I did have a question, but it's been answered already. I think you answered it on, I think, 2 separate occasions, Winslow. It was that first poem and the spiritual, holy, that the spiritual and the sexual, the way that you, I think one of the things that you said was one cannot separate the two. And exactly. So yeah, that's a really powerful poem. And yeah, thank you for the preview of the next collection. That's what I understood, that struggle, a dialogue was exactly that. So yeah, so looking forward to that. And I think we'll wrap it up there. And just if we could please just give one more round of appreciation to Winslow for that beautiful reading.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for holding space for my emotions and my feelings this evening. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Winslow.
Mm.
Hey, so this is where I stop the recording and we have a break. And those of you who'd like to come back, we have an open mic session. You can read your own work, someone else's work. It's usually a lot of fun. So I hope to see you in 5 minutes or so, which would make it 20:48 South African time. Okay.
Okay.